We may finally have a roadmap for ending the war in Gaza. Hamas is reportedly prepared to discuss giving up its weapons. Washington is talking about Israel's withdrawal. Jared Kushner has been shuttling between the different players, trying to turn American proposals into an actual agreement. So, peace is around the corner. Well, I wouldn't book these celebrations just yet, because there is one date that could matter almost as much as anything agreed in Cairo: October 27, Israel's election day. And we're here to explain why. Simply, the latest diplomatic push brought together Kushner, Tony Blair, Nikolai Miladinov, regional mediators from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and of course a Hamas delegation led by Khalil al-Hayya. The discussions focused on moving the American roadmap from diplomatic language, which as we know is usually the easy part, to actual implementation. Hamas reportedly expressed readiness to proceed and requested the start of a formal 14-day negotiating period to establish timelines. There are essentially three major components here. First, governance. Civilian administration of Gaza would move to the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, the technocratic body responsible for running everyday affairs. That is not a big deal. Second, eventually, Israeli withdrawal. And third, by far the most difficult, Hamas's weapons. Washington's position is that Gaza must be completely demilitarized. That means Hamas stops rearming, gives up its weapons, and ultimately dismantles its military infrastructure, including tunnels. And according to officials involved in this process, the Americans want actions that are verifiable and irreversible, which sounds pretty much straightforward until you ask the rather important question: who goes first? The real problem. Israel says it will not fully withdraw until Hamas and Gaza are completely disarmed. Hamas, meanwhile, is being asked to surrender its main military leverage while Israeli forces remain inside Gaza, and Israeli strikes have not completely stopped. We all know this. So Israel effectively says, give up your weapons, then we will leave. Hamas effectively responds, leave, or at least guarantee that you will, and then we will disarm. And considering the history between these two sides, trust isn't exactly the most abundant commodity in the room. This is the real negotiation. Not whether everybody likes the phrase demilitarized Gaza. It's actually who takes the first irreversible step and what guarantees they receive in return. Then, of course, there's Netanyahu. And this is where I think the Israeli election becomes extremely important. Israel is scheduled to vote on October 27. And frankly, I would be surprised to see Netanyahu make major irreversible concessions before then. Technical negotiations? Yes. Working groups? Absolutely. Statements about constructive discussions? I'm sure we'll get plenty of those. But a substantial Israeli withdrawal before an election? I'm very much skeptical. Netanyahu needs to sell any agreement to Israeli voters as a victory. He needs to be able to say Hamas disarmed because Israel forced it to. Not that Israel withdrew because negotiations required compromise. So, that distinction may sound semantic outside Israel. Electorally, it is anything but. The bigger risk, and there is another scenario we shouldn't ignore, by the way. Israel could escalate again, I'm afraid. So, if Netanyahu believes military pressure strengthens his negotiating position or his political position before October, there is every reason to watch that possibility closely, and I'm talking about these days. That's why American pressure matters enormously right now, these times. Washington may have managed to get the parties closer to the same roadmap, but getting everyone to admire the map is one thing. Getting them to actually start driving is another. My expectation between now and October 27, we will probably see negotiations, announcements, and perhaps limited progress, but I would be cautious about expecting the big breakthrough. And, of course, if Washington doesn't keep significant pressure on Netanyahu, we may see escalation before we see implementation. So, yes, watch Cairo, watch Hamas, watch Jared Kushner, but above all, watch Netanyahu and watch October 27, because the next phase of Gaza may be shaped as much by Israel's ballot box as by anything happening at the negotiating table. I'm Nizar Sadawi. As you know, thanks for watching.